I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
In my journey as an entrepreneur, I really found who I am as a human.
When was I proud of myself today?
The cold exposure, it conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
The mycelium, which you can think of as the root system.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
Work at a gratitude practice.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
What the hell am I doing? Can I really do this? Is this really worth it?
A wake-up call to me that I could not try to be something I'm not.
For me, it's really inspiring people to step out. And you don't have to step all the way out.
We're getting real deep.
That's what I like. What's your purpose?
Nothing starts without a plan. Nothing ever goes to plan.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable.
Entrepreneurship, I truly believe, to anybody on this call is grit.
When people are on the path, they shine.
We so often convert things into flaws as opposed to strengths.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
Ayahuasca is basically a brew of different plants that grow in the Amazon rainforest.
I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. This episode is brought to you by Sigmatic. I have been drinking Sigmatic products for 3 years, and I'm thrilled that the company has been expanding. My go-to products are the Lion's Mane coffee, Reishi, Cordyceps, and Chaga elixirs, and the 10 mushroom blend that I add to my post-workout plant protein smoothies. They also just launched a new protein powder of their own that I am pumped to try. So what is this shiitake? I'm glad you asked. We have the National Educator from Sigmatic as our guest today. Learn while you shop by heading to forsigmatic.com/bold and vulnerable, or typing your discount code at checkout, all caps, bold and vulnerable. Hey guys, welcome to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. This is Jessica, and today we have a very special and intelligent guest on, Danielle Ryan. Danielle is a registered herbalist of the American Herbalists Guild, a certified holistic nutritionist, and a national educator at Sigmatic, which you guys have probably heard us mention on previous episodes, as they have many of our favorite elixirs and products. Prior to joining forces with Sigmatic, she received her BA in Environmental Studies and Philosophy from Whitman College. She studied Ayurveda in India and became a certified yoga instructor on the banks of the Ganges River. She then worked with a naturopathic doctor in Indonesia, where she became a certified raw chef and detox coach. But it was leading trekking adventures into the backcountry of Thailand, where she became particularly fascinated by herbal medicine. After several years in Asia, Danielle landed in Boulder, Colorado to formalize her education in holistic medicine. Upon completing her graduate studies at the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism, she opened a private practice, Danielle Ryan Wellness, where she worked with hundreds of clients across the U.S., specializing in treatment for individuals with autoimmune conditions and chronic illness. She was invited to become the instructor of mycology at the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism, where she still teaches. Danielle brings her passion and expertise in herbal medicine, clinical practice, teaching, formulation, and her deep love for fungi to the everyday magic of Sigmatic as their national educator. In her free time, you can find her outside, whether under the sun or stars, summer heat or winter snow. She'll either be gardening, foraging, cooking plant-based recipes, rock climbing, hiking, skiing, surfing, or scuba diving. Welcome, Danielle, to the show, and that was a ton of information in your bio, so I'm very excited and thrilled to dive deep into your journey.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you both today.
Well, we're excited to dig in. For Sigmatic is one of our favorite companies in terms of the products that they put out there in the world, and I'm actually drinking my Four Sigmatic right now, so very fitting for this phone call. But we wanted to start kind of prior to that. We want to dig in deeper to some of your past and what got you to where you are today. So, could you perhaps tell us about your experience abroad and maybe what were some of those life-changing takeaways that you had from India, Indonesia, and Thailand? And feel free to navigate all three of those or choose one, but whatever will give us the best background of what the lessons are that you learned when you were traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, and I think I say this often, but the reason I'm so passionate and in love with the world of mushrooms and herbal medicine is this idea of connection. So I always say it's so much bigger than drinking mushroom coffee, although cheers, I'm drinking mine as well as we chat. But this idea of connection, so connecting to each other, to the land, to the things that are really healing our bodies. And that's really what defines my several-year chapter in Asia. So most of my time I was leading these backcountry trips. So I would take people out into hill tribe villages, and we would be out for 3 weeks at a time. And the trip was called Come With Nothing, Go Home Rich. So literally you could only bring one change of clothes and then 5 items of your choice. So it would often be a journal, a pen, a book, you name it. And there are several reasons for that, but we were trekking into really remote villages, and the way of life is so deeply connected to the earth. We would go out and forage food. One of the most profound moments was sitting in literally a tree house with a Thai medicine man, and he literally just had this wicker tray full of tiny piles of different roots and barks. And I speak fluent Thai, but he didn't even speak Thai. He spoke this dialect called Bakanya that they speak in some of these really remote villages. And so we had a translator from Thai, English, Bakanya to try to explain what all of these different plants were for. And it was this intense moment of connection to the earth, to one another, despite being so far away from all of our lands that we call home. Being able to sit together and look at these very real, pieces of nature, and view them in this way that this is really all we need to be nourished and healed, and it's all provided for us, right? The world is offering this. And so it was like, yeah, I guess that's the first moment that stood out when you asked this question. But this whole idea of connection, no matter where we are, what languages we speak, fungi to me really are the greatest teachers of connection. They connect every plant beneath the forest floor. 90% of plants depend on them for nutritional sustenance. They connect life and death, right? They're the grand decomposers of the world. So that's really the magic of why I've dedicated my life to the mushrooms, let's say.
That's beautiful. And I actually just got back from Thailand a few months ago, and I'm so impressed that you speak Thai. That would have been very helpful on my journey, but it's almost this unique experience that you have when you don't speak the same language as somebody. Like you mentioned, that you were in Thailand and this person actually spoke a native dialect. So that's so amazing that you had this sense of connection with that person, and we are all connected. So I love that that's what brought you on this journey into your love for mycology and just, herbalism and finding healing through food, and finding that food can be a medicinal way to heal your body instead of some of the Western medications that we've kind of gone towards. So I love that story. That's so amazing. And so where were you in Thailand? What was the area?
I was based out of Chiang Mai, so I had an apartment there for the most time, but I was really traveling all over the place. So starting in Chiang Mai, and then another further town called Udon Thani. And then from there, we would trek into different villages. So in these 3-week trips, we would go to one village for each of the 3 weeks. So we'd hit up 3 different tribes and basically do different service projects while we were there. So staying with the local people. And it was really, really rural and really remote. So no running water, no toilet paper, really dropping into traditional ways of living, and then supporting them with any service project that had to do with education or water. So that could look like building an addition to the school or fixing water pipes throughout the village. It was really dependent on where we were and what they needed support with.
What were the 5 items that you chose to bring with you on these treks? Did it change every time, or did you bring the same 5 items?
That's a great question. I always brought a journal, a pen, a book. I was getting really deep into spiritualism and dropping in. So The Only Dance There Is by Ram Dass was one of my guiding Bible books while I was out there. And then the last 2 items would change depending on what village I was going to. So sometimes it'd be a portable camera, like one of those throwaway ones, because we would try to not bring any technology into the villages. Other times it would be, I have my certain nutrition habits. So these giant bags of dried nuts and fruits that I would get from the markets in Chiang Mai, until one time an animal came and got through all of my healthy organic nuts that I had brought. So I had to switch that up later on. But yeah, it would kind of depend. But those solid 3 were always with me.
I love that you brought Ram Dass along with you.
He's the best, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something that he says that really also shifted my perspective and is such a guiding principle in all the things I do. But he said this, and Einstein has said this in different words, but it's essentially you can't change the world from the same level of consciousness in which the problems were created. And I just love that so much in terms of having to push ourselves out of our comfort zones and get into these really unique, sometimes sticky situations in order to evolve, right? So that really, I continued to read that line in that chapter over and over again when things got challenging, which they often did, and reminded myself, okay, we all say that we want to expand our horizons and want to grow our comfort zones. And sometimes we forget to tell ourselves that part of that means being uncomfortable. That's literally in the definition. So that was a super helpful Ram Dass back pocket quote that kept me going.
Yeah. Wow. I really resonate with that. And I love that quote too. You see it everywhere in social media on memes that people make where, if you want to change the world, you have to elevate yourself and expand your consciousness, because if you're in the mud of it with everyone else, you're just contributing to more of the problems rather than the solutions, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And this was actually a big shift that moved me from being kind of an advocate for the environment. That was really my undergraduate. I was this huge activist and really passionate about healing the land. And I kind of put my own needs on the back burner. So when I would feel unwell, I would be like, oh, I'm not going to take X, Y, or Z. I can heal this on my own. And as a result, be in bed for 3 days. And I did that for years. And then I realized how much more could I contribute to the world if I was nourishing myself first. And really, when we are nourishing ourselves, when we do feel vital, that's how we can show up not only for ourselves, but to be able to do our work in the world. And that's how I feel about mushroom coffee. Really silly segue. But it's like if people are tired or if their brains aren't functioning properly or they're really stressed, how could we expect them to show up authentically in their own, on their own path and be able to do their work? So it feels like a really vital root-based way to approach so many of the issues going on our planet is starting with ourselves, feeling really good, feeling really nourished. So we have the energy and vitality to go out and do whatever it is that we're meant to do in this life.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I completely agree. I'm curious, this is sort of taking it to another I'm sort of segueing it out of mushrooms, but not really, because I'm really curious what inspired you to go down this route. Like, was it something that you saw in your childhood or growing up? Like, what inspired you to go into, this natural way of living?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have stories about, like, I had an autoimmune disorder, or I had this going on with my gut. What's your story?
Yeah. So I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, in a very Southern California bubble. And I never felt at home. I never resonated with the lifestyle and the way that people kind of communicated with each other, and was like, there's got to be something else. There's got to be a different way. And so I went to Thailand for the first time by myself when I was 15, studying Buddhism. And after that, I mean, it was kind of these like organic processes that led me one step at a time, looking for how else can I lead my life, right? And so traveling was a really big part of it. I moved to an intentional permaculture community, which was another really potent catalyst to my journey. And it was incredible. We were living pretty much off the land, harvesting our own water, growing our own food, building our natural homes. And it felt really good for the most part. And in my path, I'm kind of always looking for, like, where's the crack that the light gets in through? And that's what I was looking for when I was trying to shift out of that Santa Barbara lifestyle. Then when I was at this amazing community called Quail Springs, when someone would get sick or cut their arm, there was a little plastic box full of Band-Aids and ibuprofen, and these plastic jars full of Western medicines. And that was the crack for me in that world. I'm like, we have so much that's being provided in nature, and yet we're not using it to heal ourselves. So that really was like this initial spark towards, okay, that's the gap. Let me lean towards herbal medicine, natural medicine. And so I think it's a combination of looking for, like, okay, where's that crack and how can I fill it? And this idea of constantly wanting to go to the root of the issues. So like digging deep. Before functional mushrooms, I was really passionate about composting, and specifically industrial composting, and got into soil health, and through soil began to learn about mycelium, which led me, it was like this, beyond organic agriculture, I was passionate about the soil. Okay, how can we grow healthy fruits and vegetables if the soil isn't vital enough to provide the nutrients that we're then going to eat through these foods? So, okay, continuing going back to the roots. And then within the soil, I learned, wow, a large majority of the soil is actually this almost invisible partner fungi called mycelium. Okay, let's dig into that. And so it was all these different, these different things from different places that kind of led me. I never knew where I was going. I kind of just followed one step at a time, and it never made sense in the moment. And I just continued to trust, okay, I'm really into soil. It's weird, but I'm going to lean into it. And, I'm really into traveling and connecting with nature. Okay, I'm going to lean into it and get a job leading backpacking trips. All right. I fell in love when I was in Asia, which moved me back to Boulder. I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow that. And there ended up being one of the best schools for clinical herbalism right down the street from where we ended up having our home. And so it was really trusting, I think, in each step of the way that kind of led me to where I am. Very organic story.
I think that's so beautiful that you say you lean into the trust, and none of, something I tell clients is, when it's true and when it's your intuition, you just know. And usually there's no logical explanation for it. You can't logically and mentally explain this to somebody. You just know, and you just follow that. And I love that you've been this way, it seems, your entire life. I think that that's so beautiful because I wish more people did that, including myself, because sometimes I get into in my own way.
Yeah.
With a lot of, well, does this make sense type of stuff rather than I'm just going to trust this. This is fun for me right now. I think that's really beautiful. Would you say that your upbringing had a lot to do with that? Like your family just really supported you in whatever direction you wanted to go in?
I think it was the fact that my parents started taking us abroad when really I was in the womb, when I took my first international trip, which was to Israel, and I was in my mom's belly. But this idea, when we travel, it's exactly like you said. We often can't speak the language, or we can't rely on some of the tools that we're used to getting us by in our comfort zones and in our daily lives and in our homes. And so we have to connect with our core. We have to connect to our intuition and trust that it's going to work out, right? Be smart, but trust in that. And so I'm so grateful for them really, I think, starting to push me out of my comfort zone before I could walk, and being exposed to different people and places and languages. Almost forcing me to like, okay, you gotta dig deep here. You can't use any of the things that are easy to be able to get what you need, whether it's a glass of water or a bathroom.
So I wanted to get back into what got you interested in mycology, and maybe you can explain mycology for the listeners who may not know what you're talking about, but it looks like this journey that you've been taking where you're trusting yourself and you're leaning into things that are working for you. Like, hey, I'm interested in soil now. Like, I want to start down this path. And so let's maybe shift into what got you into mycology, because I think a few things, like, mushrooms get a bad rap because most people associate them with being they're deadly, or they're something where you're going to trip balls, and a lot of people are associating mushrooms with these negative connotations, which I want to kind of break through that on this call. But I'm curious what got you into mycology, and maybe we can dive deep into that journey.
Actually, this is a perfect segue because it's really bringing these two big themes that we've been talking about together. And one of those themes is this idea of connection. And then the other is this idea of looking for the cracks, like what's there that we're not giving enough attention to. And so through soil and environmental studies, I end up falling into this amazing grad school here in Boulder, Colorado, and we're studying herbal medicine. And there were so few courses on mycology, which is the study of mushrooms, the science and study of mushrooms. And the more and more they would come up, but wouldn't get the attention they deserved, the more my interest was piqued. So I began looking at every potential outlet I could to get more information about functional mushrooms. So I ended up learning how to grow mushrooms, and that became a big part of my work with my amazing teacher, Peter McCoy. And I just started teaching classes. I remember the first class I taught in my clinical year of Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism. It was my first ever class, and it was a class open to the public, hardly advertised it. It was like 101 on mushrooms after I'd been growing them, and I wanted to teach people how to do DIY functional mushrooms in their kitchen. And I had like 75 people show up, and it was the largest class that our herb school had ever, the largest attendees of any clinician taught class. And it was this moment like, oh my gosh, people need this information. They're hungry to learn about this, and there's so few outlets. So continued like, okay, how can I lean into this? And it was really interesting. When I opened my private practice, I had no idea what my focus was going to be. And I think it's the nature with many herbalists that the people that ended up showing up at my door basically said, hey, I've tried every practitioner under the sun, and you're my last resort. And there was a lot of individuals that had autoimmunity. I worked a lot with Lyme and Crohn's disease, a lot of undiagnosed chronic illness. And in my search, I did individual formulations for every client. And one of the safest natural options was to use functional mushrooms. So without even kind of setting that stage or having that be my intention, it just fell into my lap. And over again, that became the most prominent natural medicine of choice that I was seeing incredible results from. So after several months in practice, I was like, okay, I have a functional mushroom based practice now, and continued to lean into it. And then after that, clinical work is beautiful, and there's a lot, it's holistic. So it's not just talking about what someone's eating or what types of herbs they're taking. There's an emotional and spiritual piece to it as well. And a lot of holding space. And I think it takes a very specific type of person to really hold that kind of space. And while I knew I was so invested in the mushrooms and the plant medicine, the clinical work, I was like, I had no education on being able to sit with people. So I was like, how can I, one, expand my reach to a larger audience and focus on the things within this world that do light me up? So being able to formulate, being able to educate, and it was really interesting. In my search, when I was looking for ways to support my clients, I really wanted to empower them. So I would tell them, my goal is for you to no longer have to see me on our first appointment. And they're like, what? That's bizarre. I'm like, I want you to be so in tune with your own body that you know when something's wrong, and you know what to use to fix it, and you know how to create that medicine for yourself. And so I would teach them how to make their own mushroom teas and tinctures. And it's a pretty intense process. So I would have these clients looking at me with, Danielle, you're crazy. I don't have time or energy to do that. Give me something easy. And I actually found Sigmatic in my search for another really powerful option that was easy to be able to deliver these mushrooms to my clients. And it was after a couple months of working with Sigmatic products with them that I literally was like on the Sigmatic website one day, stumbling around, and this thing popped up that was like, we need a national educator. And no one has ever looked for my resume ever. I have the weirdest resume of teaching mycology and being a registered herbalist. I mean, there's only a couple thousand of us in the world. And it was everything that I was. And so it was this, again, crazy organic process of like, got it. I guess this is what I need to do. And kind of leaned into that. And that was about 1.5 years ago. And it's been such an amazing journey.
First of all, wow. We're huge fans of Taro and Sigmatic and what that company is doing. I'm so glad they found you. You are perfect for that position. I love what you just mentioned there, because I think, I've heard Taro talk in different interviews where, his goal was for the products to be convenient and for them to taste good. And so that's something that you were searching for. And it's almost like this serendipitous connection between the two of you, marrying that, your experience with what they needed, which is somebody to spread the word. And I just think it's amazing. I wanted to touch on a few things as well, because when you were talking about connection and how that's what brought you to mycology, I was thinking of mycelium, because it just feels like that word, just like, to me, it means connection to me, because it's just underground, and it's this thing that's bigger than we even know what to do with. And I wanted to see if you could maybe dive into mycelium for us as well, so that people know the difference between what the mushroom is that you would have in a Sigmatic mushroom coffee versus mycelium and living organisms that are under the earth and thousands of years old, and maybe 3 miles long, and what those differences are, and what people are actually consuming and drinking versus what keeps us alive as human beings. And I know that's probably going to be a long thing to describe, but I just kept hearing you say connection, and it just made me think mycelium, and it's just because those words are like homogenous to me.
To break it down for all our listeners, there's essentially 3 parts of the species of a mushroom. And one of those is the mycelium, which you can think of as the root system. The other, what we think of probably when we hear the word mushroom is actually the fruiting body. So that can be thought of like the apple on the tree. And then there's the spores, which are essentially the mushroom seeds. And mycelium, so those are the three parts. And now we're going to dig in, pun intended, a little bit to mycelium. So if anyone's a gardener out there and you've dug in your soil, that white stringy stuff, that's all mycelium. And I like to think of it as the cardiovascular system of the fungi, because it's literally like these hollow tubes that are transporting nutrients to many, many different species underneath the ground. And so there's actually 90% of plants that depend on mycelium to be able to keep them alive. So many people think of the roots of the plant as the way that they're absorbing nutrients from the soil, but it's almost that the roots are like stabilizers, keeping the tree or keeping the plant rooted. And then the mycelium, which they're called mycorrhiza, myco meaning mushroom or fungi, and rhiza or rhizome being the Latin for root. And so we have this group of fungi called mycorrhiza that are mushrooms or fungi that have an association with plants. And I love kind of this image. They either wrap around the roots of the plants, or sometimes they even go inside of the roots of the plants to deliver nutrients. And it's so important to recognize this when, as an herbalist too, this like totally lights me up on fire, because we look at different plants for providing certain nutrients. So for example, we take nettle because it's really nutritive, or moringa leaf, and we give all the credit to the plant. And again, this idea of going back to the roots of who's really responsible for it, it's these ally fungi that are literally pulling up nutrients from up to miles away to deliver it to the plant and what that plant is needing. And mycelium have the most incredible tactics for being able to harvest and mine nutrients and minerals for a plant's survival. So literally, these mycelium, so think of them as little hairs. Each little hair is called a hyphae, and the entire system of hyphae, so these thread-like hairs, the whole system, if you look at it, is mycelium. But these hyphae can move in all directions and go vertically, horizontally through the soil, and they have these really rich enzymatic tips. And so it's almost like our own digestive systems. We're actually we're more related to fungi than we are to plants. We share about 40% of our DNA with them. And the way that we digest our nutrients is one of those similarities. And so with hyphae, they expand through the soil. And then when they see a nutrient that they need, so let's say they need iron, and they go out into this rock, they literally will secrete digestive enzymes from their hyphal tip and break down whatever rock. They're literally like little miners to be able to absorb that mineral and then send it through this cardiovascular system of theirs, this hyphal network of mycelia, and bring it back into the plant that needs that nutrient to keep it alive. So they are this incredible underground, it's been called nature's internet. If you take a photo of what mycelium looks like underground, the patterning of it is actually nearly identical to both the internet, the human brain, and the universe. So let's just pause on that for a moment.
I'm 100% glad you went into 40% of our DNA being connected to fungi, because I'm a believer that fungi is the foundation of human creation and how we actually became species on this earth. And so I'm really glad that you made that larger connection to mycelium being part of our universe and almost being like this little cardiovascular internet for us.
Yes, they are so incredible. We could have a whole episode just on hyphae and mycelium.
Yeah.
I think too, like what got me interested in what you were just talking about, which is the mycelium, was when I think I saw a documentary about mycelium, and there's an estimated 2,000 to 9,000-year-old mycelium in the national forest in Oregon, covering 3.7 square miles, which is insane. And that blew my mind. I was like, whoa, okay. That to me brought to my mind the picture of what you were just describing, which is like that internet web of roots and that internet web of just like the fungi kind of taking over underneath the ground, and it's something that we don't even know is there.
Yeah, that's the largest single organism in the world. It's called the honey mushroom up in Eastern Oregon that you're referring to. And the vast amount of species and how large this entire kingdom is always blows my mind, especially when we realize how little we know about the entire kingdom and about mushrooms themselves. So, just to like zoom out for all our listeners to make sure we're all on the same page, fungi are their own kingdom, and they actually weren't given their own kingdom until the early 70s. They were just thought of a lower form of plant. And one of the big distinctions that put them in their own kingdom was that they can't produce their own energy. They can't photosynthesize like plants can. They need, like us, to basically digest enzymes and get their nutrition from outside of their environment. So they are their own kingdom, and they're an incredibly large kingdom. Of the 15 million species on Earth, about 6 million of those are fungi, which is like, whoa, that's, to give you an idea, about at least 6 times as many species as all plants on Earth. So every fruit, vegetable, tree, shrub, there's 6 times as many species of fungi, and we know so little about them. So it's this idea of unraveling the mysterious.
Yeah, and shout out to the people who lived like thousands and thousands of years ago and tasted all the mushrooms and figured out which ones were poisonous or not, bless you, people who did that work for us. And I remember asking you earlier about the bad reputation that some mushrooms get, so I do want to cover that. But I thought we would start with maybe breaking down some of the mushrooms that you can benefit from your health, and then maybe we can go into more of like the psychedelic type mushrooms. But I really want to break down kind of the main mushrooms that Sigmatic really promotes, which is the Chaga, Cordyceps, Reishi, and lion's mane. So I didn't know if you were able to maybe break down some of the benefits of each of those mushrooms and why somebody would want to, go to Sigmatic and say, hey, I'm going to get my Cordyceps elixir versus my lion's mane elixir.
So to give you guys an idea, within this fungi kingdom, so think of this as this big umbrella, we can basically break up all the mushrooms into 2 categories. And this is really general, but one of those categories are going to be mushrooms that grow on the ground. And those are typically going to be your culinary mushrooms. So portobellos, button mushrooms, cremini. That also would include most poisonous mushrooms or psychedelic mushrooms are going to grow from the earth. And then there's this other category called functional mushrooms, which are typically mushrooms that grow on trees. And that's what we're talking about here. And as we've been saying, oh, they're so mysterious and hidden, I also want to mention that these functional mushrooms are some of the oldest, safest natural medicines used by humans on the planet. So we know that humans have been using these mushrooms for at least 5,300 years, if not longer. And so although they might be new to some of us in the West, they're not new to be using these as humans. So in many cultures, from Ayurvedic, traditional medicine of India, to traditional Chinese medicine, to Russian folk medicine, these mushrooms have been really revered and part of daily life for thousands and thousands of years. Okay. And where do we start? Within that big category of functional mushrooms, we're going to just talk about 4. And these are both the 4 that we focus on at Sigmatic, and the 4 that are really taking a prominent seat on the supplement shelves today. So we'll start with reishi, and reishi is known as the queen of mushrooms. And at Sigmatic, we give every mushroom a word or two to help you guys remember what that mushroom does. So for reishi, we call her the chill mushroom. And she's amazing for occasional stress, deep sleep, immune support. If you're not sure where to start with a mushroom, reishi is a really awesome place to begin, because whether we realize it or not, most of us are dealing with some chronic layer of stress. And when we support our stress response, there's symptoms that maybe we don't even think are related to stress, like headaches or digestion symbols, that begin to go away when our stress response is decreased and our adrenals are supported. So reishi, the chill mushroom, I recommend taking her in the evening before bed. One of my favorite products, which Jessica, I hope you've had, is our mushroom hot chocolate with reishi. So it's like the most delicious, guilt-free dessert to have at the end of your day and really set you up for a night of deep sleep.
Yeah, I've almost tried every single product that you have. So yes, I have tried it. And I was going to mention too, you were talking about those 5 items that you would take on your treks, and it's really hilarious. But my Reishi Elixir is one of the things that I take with me when I'm backpacking. And if anyone knows backpacking, you want your pack to be as light as possible. And my Reishi Elixir packets that I take with me are like my sleeping, I guess, aids. And they don't like knock you out, but it really does help after a long day. You feel like you're boosting your immune system, but you're also relaxing after a really physically challenging day of hiking or backpacking. So my 4 Sigmatic Reishi is actually something that I take with me when I'm backpacking, which might be weird, but it works.
I love that. I wish 4 Sigmatic existed when I was leading the backpacking trips. That would have definitely been my 5th item.
Right? Exactly.
I've been taking the reishi mushroom elixir mix the last few days. It's been amazing. I've been sleeping like a baby.
Yes.
I was like, my boyfriend and I, it was actually the first time we took it. We did 1 packet each, and we were like, oh my God, this is like, what's in this? I feel like we literally were like, we feel like we're kind of high, but in the most zen way possible, you know?
Yeah, I love that. So reishi is a mind, body, spirit mushroom. And in all of our formulas, it's kind of a secret extra bonus, but we add an additional herb that supports the function of that mushroom. So in reishi, you're also getting tulsi, which is known as holy basil, and it's the most revered plant in Ayurveda in India. So I was actually just backpacking a few weeks ago up in the Himalayas, and it was me and my 2 best girlfriends and 25 Indian people, and there was tulsi growing all along the trails. And everyone was so excited. We were picking tulsi and eating it as we went. But it's known as a wisdom herb. And that's kind of how reishi is seen as well in the world of functional mushrooms. Reishi has been called the elixir of life, the tonic of immortality. It has all these incredible names. It was, once only reserved for kings and queens and emperors because of how incredible reishi really is.
Wow. I'm going to have to try the mushroom cacao one because I have that sweet tooth, and to have something like that is just totally guilt-free and relaxing would be perfect, especially before bed.
Oh, we'll get you lots of mushroom hot cocoa, don't you worry. Okay, so we have the queen, we have reishi, our chill mushroom, then we're jumping into chaga, and chaga is known as the king of mushrooms. So chaga is actually the most antioxidant-rich food on the planet. And this is amazing. When you think of who needs antioxidants, I usually ask my audiences that, and they're like, well, everyone, which is a pretty solid answer. But more specifically, it's anyone exposed to a lot of foreign antigens or different being in different environments. So people that are exposed to free radicals. So that could be smokers, people that live in fire season, fire prone areas, people that travel, teachers, people that work in the health industry and hospitals, Even when you exercise, free radicals are released. So it's really this superhero immune support. And I take chaga everywhere I go, and I'm on the road about half the time, and chaga never leaves my side. And our image for chaga is this superhero, and we call chaga your daily bodyguard. And the idea is when your body is so full of antioxidant properties, when your immune system is so strong, even if you walk into a group of people that are really ill and coughing in your face, your body isn't going to be a host for whatever ailment is in the air, right? Your own daily bodyguard. So chaga, we say, be well with chaga.
I love that you mentioned who would benefit from chaga most, because of course everyone could benefit from all of these different types of medicinal mushrooms. But I think that, you mentioned some lines of work, and I know that we have listeners in the healthcare industry. I know that we have listeners that work in hospitals. I'm not sure if we have any smoker listeners. Maybe we do. But lots of our listeners are in California in fire-prone areas. So it's really great to hear that this could be something that could benefit some of the listeners. So chaga for the win, the king.
Chaga is a great coffee alternative too. So it has this bitter, earthy flavor to it. And so for Sigmatic, our roots are in Finland. Our founder is a 13th generation farmer who grew up in Finland. And around World War II, there was issues importing coffee into Finland. And this might not seem like a huge deal until you know that Finns drink more coffee per capita than any other nation on earth. They drink like 6 cups of coffee a day. And so when they couldn't get enough coffee into Finland, they were freaking out. And they needed an alternative. And chaga is a parasite to birch trees. It grows up in really cold climates, including Scandinavia and up in Finland. And so they started brewing chaga tea as a coffee alternative. So fun story, if you don't drink caffeine, chaga is an amazing morning beverage too. Keep you going and kind of give you that similar taste to coffee, but without the coffee itself.
That's amazing. And Danielle, you probably don't know this, but I own a coffee company as well. And so that's a really great response for people that are, you don't have anything else? You don't have any tea? Oh, I don't drink coffee. Well, I can send them to Four Sigmatic to get their chaga, and then they'll be all set. So that's amazing.
I want to hear more about your coffee company too.
Yes, we can talk offline more. But yeah, so chaga the king. So what is the next mushroom?
Yeah, so let's talk about cordyceps. Cordyceps is a really powerful fungi that we say get going with cordyceps. And none of these fungi have caffeine in them or have stimulants in them, but cordyceps is the energizing mushroom. And it's really powerful, basically supports oxygenation in your bloodstream, which gives you a greater sense of energy without giving you an upper or any sort of prop. So there isn't a crash or, an afternoon slump like you might have from a different type of stimulant. And it's really cool. Cordyceps is one of the few natural products that I feel you can really feel in your body after just a serving or two. So typically with natural products, it's like, take this for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe you'll feel a difference. And if people are non-believers in natural medicine or functional mushrooms, I give them some cordyceps and I'm like, yo, try this. Let me know how you feel. And they're like, wow, that stuff works. So really powerful physical energy for athletes. If you live at altitude. So I live at about 6,000 feet up in the Rockies, and really amazing for people coming to visit me from sea level to get them breathing. And if you are an athlete, I actually recommend to take it in recovery. So as a building, right, all of these mushrooms, it's really about nourishing and building the system rather than treating something short term. Like the way these mushrooms have always been used is as a tonic. So that means something taken every single day to build the life force, right? It's like stoking the fire within us. And cordyceps should be used in the same way. So even if you want to take it short term to feel this quick energy, long term, I recommend taking it like in recovery phase to really build the system long term.
When I was in Thailand, I believe I was in Chiang Rai, there was this little cordyceps house, and I walked in there, and I don't speak Thai, they don't speak English, but I looked over and I saw this refrigerator and it had all these cordyceps in it. And I had never seen a cordyceps. I had just been drinking Four Sigmatic, and along my journeys in Thailand, I was buying a bunch of cordyceps, like the little capsules, because they're so much cheaper in Thailand. So I was stocking my backpack up for when I got home. But then, yeah, I know, I'm crazy. My friend was with me, and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, don't worry about it. So I'm stocking up my cordyceps, but then I see this cordyceps house, and she already knew that I was going like on a rampage with my cordyceps, and she's like, oh God, we're going to be in here for like 5 hours. But we went in there and they made this beautiful tonic for us, but it was with the mushrooms that they had pulled out of this refrigerator, and I was on cloud 9 at that point. So any athlete that's out there, or anyone that's just looking for an energy boost, and I'm also glad that you mentioned elevation, because that's a huge help to take cordyceps when you're traveling, and then also traveling even in the US when you maybe on a ski trip or something like that. It can really help up the energy and create a difference in, if you're tired from time zones, things like that. So love the cordyceps.
Yes, I love that story. 1, I take cordyceps every time I go ski. And 2, we would have been just the best duo. When I was living in Asia, for 3 years, I would get rid of, I was like, I don't need this pair of pants, or I don't need this jacket, like literally donating all my clothes, and instead filling my backpack with rocks and different herbs that I collected along the way.
That's how you got to do it. Yeah. I didn't have any clothes, no like trinkets. I was stocking up on my herbs. And I'm like, some of them, I didn't even know what they were. I was just like, yeah. What does it do? Okay, cool. Yeah, give me that. Like, I didn't even know what the translation was of the herb. I had to, find an herb book, look it up, try to figure it out what it was online. But the person, would be pointing to like a part of their body, and they'd be like, oh, this will help this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Give me that. So like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's just
good for you.
Just experiment, So cordyceps, love it. And then what haven't we hit yet? Lion's mane. Yes.
I'm really interested in lion's mane. This is going to be fascinating to hear.
Lion's mane is amazing. So many people ask me, is your lion's mane vegan? And I giggle and like to remind them, lion's mane is the common name for the fungi Hericium erinaceus. And it's called lion's mane because it grows off of trees, like we talked about, many of these functional mushrooms do. And it has these white cascading hairs that quite resemble the mane of a lion. And at Four Sigmatic, we nickname lion's mane the think mushroom. And lion's mane is gaining so much popularity because it's a very high standard in our culture. We're always trying to be more productive. How can we really get our brain juices flowing, right? Get that creativity. And the way I like to think about lion's mane is, if you've ever had those moments where you sit down at your computer and you have like 300 emails to bust through, and you just like are in the zone, and you're like, whoa, look up, and hours have gone by, and you're like, whoa, I don't even know what happened. That's kind of the feeling that lion's mane gives you. So it's this think mushroom, productivity, focus, memory, really enabling us to kind of do our work in the world, but with support. And that's the way I really want everyone to think of these fungi. And really all natural medicine are allies to be able to help us do what we already have to do more efficiently, with more life force, with more passion behind it. And there's so many times people are like, oh, I feel sluggish, or, I'm not tired at night, or all these different symptoms. And it's so important to remind ourselves that we have this entire world of allies, be it plants and fungi, that we've always leaned on as humans to help us do our work, right? To help us function optimally in whatever way that might be. So lion's mane is incredible, especially for all of us in the Western modern world that are always looking to keep our brains sharp and to bust out work. So think with lion's mane.
Awesome. So sort of transitioning a little bit, I don't know I think we can talk about all of these different types of mushrooms all day long. But I'm really, really curious about your experience or what you have to say about psychedelics.
Yeah, this should be a whole nother podcast.
I know, but I really want to get to it because it's one of my favorite topics. So, and you said that it's, you talk about like the connection and kind of like nourishing ourselves and using it as it's been around for such a long time, and people have used it for generations to help ourselves and our bodies. What is your take on psychedelic mushrooms, and have you ever experimented with them?
This is so funny. I don't think I've ever been asked this so spot on a podcast, but
you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Oh, it's okay. I will say I think there is incredible potential for healing within so many aspects of the fungi kingdom, and psychedelics is right up there. So in Colorado, as you probably know, psilocybin mushrooms, which is the compound that makes this class of mushrooms called psychedelic, or have these effects on our brains. And I think we absolutely need to lean in and be able to acknowledge and experiment and embrace the power of all types of mushrooms. And kind of going back, we talked about this in the beginning about connection a little bit, how it's so much bigger than having people drink mushroom coffee. Like, that's a huge step, but it's what we're talking about and why we're sitting here together is so much larger than that. It's this idea that anything that's foreign, anything that we don't know how to talk about, we kind of just keep in the corner. And the power that mushrooms have to heal our bodies, to heal the earth, to really raise the vitality of each of us is massive. And the only way we can really tap into that potential is by taking them out of that hidden, scary, foreign, unknown place in the corner and bringing it into the light. And the best way I've found to bring something into the light, to get to know something, is to sit down and have a cup of tea with it, to have a cup of coffee with it. And so I love that we can open the doors to conversations about psychedelics by not being afraid of mushrooms in all their forms. And they are still illegal, so it's like this tiptoeing topic. But I think the first step to even being able to talk about it openly is not being afraid of mushrooms anymore. And that's what I think we're really doing at Sigmatic, is instead of shying away from the stereotypes and, oh gosh, psychedelic mushrooms, we can't talk about it. It's like, let's lean in to all those stereotypes, make it cool and fun and accessible to be able to talk about whatever it is around fungi. So our hashtags are on shrooms and everyday magic. And, we have hats that say on shrooms, and people are like, oh my God, how could you wear that? I'm like, yeah, I had lion's mane this morning. I'm on shrooms. Like, let's talk about it.
I mean, it used to be legal and then it became illegal, right? And I've heard nothing but, when we go into like the psychedelic realm, right? I've heard nothing but good things about mushrooms and shrooms and whatever, I've heard amazing benefits. I know people that microdose and are just like, they feel amazing. They feel their whole mind expanding, and they do it in a very safe way. We're not in any way on this podcast, obviously, if you've never experimented with that, we're not suggesting that you do, or you do it without any sort of supervision or anything like that, but just to kind of open up the topic, I've heard nothing but good things, and I know a lot of people that have experimented with shrooms and had amazing results with it.
Yeah, there's an amazing book, if you haven't read it yet, called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. So, he's the big food activist, environmentalist. He wrote Omnivore's Dilemma and In Defense of Food. And his most recent book is about, it's about many things, but including psychedelics. And it's a really great entry point for those that kind of want to take a little deeper dive.
I love Michael Pollan's book. I've actually read that, and he's been one of my heroes into journeying myself into more of a holistic lifestyle. So I just appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah. Yes. Since we're talking about mushrooms, I also want to mention Paul Stamets, because he has been somebody that I've been following as well. and I do take some of his products daily. But, something that I learned from Paul Stamets was just more about some of the patents that are out there. And I don't want to get political by any means, but, do you feel like some of the patents that are out there on mushrooms are preventing that industry from really being able to help people the way that it could on a bigger scale?
I actually think that there's a necessity to being able to protect and keep some of the magic of these mushrooms in. It's kind of like care. I want to think of it like a caretaker of a home. And I think that the potential that some of these functional fungi have to heal our bodies and to heal so many different conditions is vast and could be kind of a threat to big pharma. I'm like tiptoeing as I say this, but it's true. Like if we could heal ourselves naturally in all these ways, we wouldn't need so many of the other Western medications that so many of us rely on. And so by putting patents in hands like Paul, who I trust and love, I think is his way of like protecting some of these incredible allies from, so that we can basically use them and study them and have enough research to be able to use them on a mass scale and use them for so many people that truly need them the most.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, I think in terms of Paul having some of these patents, that's somebody who's like, okay, he's like the grandfather, right? Like that's the person you want to have these patents because you know that he is respectful towards the culture of mycology in general and what that could do for our world. And, mostly for our Western culture where these patents are really kind of fought over. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily see on the surface, but I think the bigger fear is, patents stopping people from doing certain things because of big pharma. So I appreciate you weighing in on that because that was just kind of a personal thing that was rolling around in my head, like who can get their hands on these patents and maybe they could work not in the favor of this industry really booming the way that I think it could. But yeah, Paul I think is kind of the leader in that genre. So I appreciate what he's doing and interesting to hear you guys weigh in too.
Let's get Paul in on the podcast. We'll ask him right away.
Yeah, I'll just, I've got his number. I'll just conference call him right in here.
Perfect.
My boy Paul. Paul, if you're out there, what's up? I'm just thrilled that we've been kind of covering all of these topics.
I'm learning so much just from listening to this conversation, and I'm still so fascinated by, me, Jess. I'm so mind, body, soul connection, and still so fascinated by the psychedelic talk. And I think that we can do a whole other topic on this. And Danielle, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. And if you, by asking you like, hey, have you done psychedelics?
It's okay. I think Taro gets asked that and he says, yeah, I'm a fun guy.
Exactly. I get it. It's like it's this whole thing with like, when Elon Musk was like, yeah, I smoke weed and everybody started making fun of him. So yeah. I haven't experimented with it, but I love it whenever my boyfriend is like a huge mushrooms, like he loves reishi and he's always like, I'm going on an adventure in the park. And I'm like, okay. Like once a year he'll go, he's like, it's time to rewire my brain.
Yeah, it's true. Svetlana, you have to read How to Change Your Mind. I'm thinking of Jessica, that one metaphor that Michael gives about, he's like, when you're young, you're going down a ski mountain and there's no tracks on it. So you're on this sled and you just create whatever path to get down to the bottom of the hill. And then the next day you get a little bit older and you want to go down the mountain again. And so you go down, but there's this slightly pre-existing path. And so your sled follows that same path. And over again, that path gets deeper, the walls get higher, and you end up following down the same path every day of your life. And in Michael's words, what psilocybin can do is get you out of that rut, out of that existing path that you've been following on, and see life again from this new place where there isn't the past isn't defining your future and where you're going, but rather you're present in the moment. And the future is this white open canvas that you can go in any direction, step forward into whatever that might be, and create your future anew.
I'll definitely read that book.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good one too. And Svetlana, I know that you are somebody who is super busy. So Michael Pollan also has a How to Change Your Mind talk that he did at Google, I think, or one of the big companies out there in Silicon Valley. And I watched his talk, and I think it's about an hour long, but it could be also something where you can kind of hear him.
Send it to me.
Sure. Yeah, I can send you the link for it. But yeah.
And always make time for anything that you make a priority. So
absolutely. And Michael Pollan, if you're out there, hello. We'll get you and Paul on the line with Danielle and us, and we'll have a party.
Is there anything that you would be open to sharing, a bold and vulnerable moment of yours, something that you believe would give our audience and us, and maybe even speaking to yourself, inspiration, pull to keep moving forward, like something where you were up against a wall or a difficult time and you really had to dive deep, like you like to say, and I love that you say that you love to go deep into the root of it, because that's just my mindset around everything. It's like, let's rip the Band-Aid off and heal get to the root, not just keep putting on new Band-Aids and healing the symptoms. So is there anything that you'd be open to sharing with us, a bold and vulnerable moment of yours?
Yeah, I'm going to share my transition into working with Sigmatic and what else was going on in my life at that time.
Perfect.
And this is really vulnerable. I've not really shared this, even with my own company, but I was going through a really intense breakup. So my ex and I were together 5.5 years, and I was putting all of my love and energy into keeping our relationship afloat. And I like to think of the places that we put our energy into like a garden. So the more we put our energy into something, it's like we're watering that specific plant, and that's what's going to grow. And if you don't put energy into other places, those things may not grow. And so I felt like I was putting all of my energy into this relationship, and I didn't have space to grow my own self and my own power and my own passions. And it was literally the most wild timing. Literally within hours of breaking up, I was supposed to get on a flight to move to another state with him, and we broke up that morning. And so I rerouted my flight to go visit my mom, who lives in LA. And that day was when I heard back from Sigmatic. I had forgotten that I even applied to be this national educator position. And so I was rerouted. I was in LA, and Taro, my dear friend and now boss, lives in LA. And he was like, "Oh, you're here? We can do your interview then, right now." And so I literally, it was like this crazy stroke of the universe, where the moment, literally within hours, that I decided, okay, I need to clear up my energy and make room for myself and my own life and my own passions. And that shift happened so quickly. And it was within hours that I was then working for Sigmatic and had stepped into this position that literally couldn't be more aligned with myself and my core and my values. And I don't think that would have ever happened if I didn't let go of the things that weren't serving anymore, which was that relationship, and being able to kind of reclaim that energy and redistribute it into something that does really fill me up, and I think fills up the world. Being able to step into this place, I feel like is my offering for all of us to be more vital and be healthier and be more aligned and confident and passionate in our own day-to-day lives.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. And we always appreciate a vulnerable share, the truth, honesty. That's what connects us to people, is being vulnerable and open. And it's beautiful that you were able to recognize, that this relationship, this phase was no longer serving you, which is huge, because so many people hold on because they get used to a certain routine or the comfort associated with that person or a place. And people aren't used to change. We're not really wired to want to change. Our minds are literally wired to keep us safe and comfortable.
Yep.
So it takes a lot of courage and a lot of vulnerability to make those choices for ourselves that we know will ultimately help us expand and grow. So, and we could totally see that you're doing that, and you're going to keep expanding and keep growing and keep making a change in the world.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this idea, leap and the net will appear.
Yes.
The mycelium net is appearing for you.
It's underneath us at this moment, holding us together.
It is. Well, I typically ask people what their most gifted books are, or most recommended books. I know that you already told us about How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Are there any other books that you would like to recommend to the listeners that have touched your life or that you've most gifted to other people?
Yes, I would recommend the book by the man that taught me to grow mushrooms. He's amazing, Peter McCoy, and the book is called Radical Mycology, and it's a treatise on all things functional mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, the fungi kingdom. He calls it the fungi queendom, actually, and it's a step-by-step guide if you ever want to experiment with growing your own mushrooms at home. And another book that's fantastic is by an herbalist friend, Robert Rogers, out of Canada, and it's called The Fungal Pharmacy. And that really goes into the 4 functional mushrooms we talked about today, as well as several others, and touches on the folklore, some scientific studies, and where they can be found, how to take them in proper dosages. So if you're really looking into using these functional mushrooms to support whatever healing process you're going through, that would be an awesome guide to jump into. And then, of course, we have a book that Tara wrote called Healing Mushrooms, and it's an awesome intro guide that has 50 recipes in it with beautiful pictures and is a really, really accessible way to get a grasp on functional fungi. So it goes through the mushrooms. It gives 3 really quick facts so you can always remember what each mushroom is for and when to use them. So Taro Isokoppola's book, Healing Mushrooms, those would probably be my top 3.
Thank you very much. I just wrote all of those down. I actually have Taro's book, and it's been kind of a dictionary, if you will, for me. So I definitely recommend everyone go buy Taro from For Sigmatic. His book is amazing. And Danielle, thank you so much. Danielle, also from For Sigmatic, but with her own special journey that led her here. And I'm glad that we touched into some of your personal traveling and what shaped you and how you became interested in mycology and all of your core values, such as connection and things that have really brought you to where you are today. So I appreciate your vulnerability, and we loved having you. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you, find you? Where are you most active? Maybe you can drop your social media and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so awesome to dive in with both of you, and how refreshing to be able to talk about who we are as people and as women beyond, right, underneath the surface, underneath the soil of kind of our face in the world and our titles, but to really just connect as humans. So it's been amazing. And my Instagram is where I'm most active, and I post about different plants and mushrooms and different talks that I'm doing around the country. And it's at Danielle Ryan Broida. And then For Sigmatic, both our website and our Instagram will always advertise when I'm going to be in different places. And I post a lot on there and stories on there to keep you guys excited about what we're up to as a brand.
And we will link all of those in the show notes. So head to the show notes to get all of the links from Danielle and For Sigmatic. And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Don't forget to use your discount code at forsigmatic.com. You can type in your code at checkout, all caps, bold and vulnerable. Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.